All right, we're live.
Live.
Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be doing like a special type of stream. I have with me DancingSean, who's a good friend of mine from we go way back actually, and we're going to be talking about the top 10 movies and series, not this TV series because it could be any type of lengthy show, but a series. So first off, I want everyone to know who Sean is. So, Sean, who are you?
Hey, my name is Sean. My handle is Dancing Sean because I like to dance and I do a lot of dancing. But also I like movies and TV shows. I watch probably too much of it, enough that I'm maybe at the point of trying to be a critic of it. I've got a YouTube channel and I've been there's a podcast for Game of Thrones called History of Westeros. I've been part of it for a few years,
Yes, that's with
and
Zeus, right?
Aziz and Ashea at History of Westeros, and they actually started covering with a focus on the books. There's other people involved in the very beginnings of it, but they started off trying to cover the books. Then a show came out, and that kind of exploded, and that kind of got pretty big. And that I bought cameras and microphones and started. I've always kind of approached, I'll say film, movies, TV. I started off more into movies, but I got more into TV, and I think TV's gotten better lately also. But try to approach it from with like a critical eye, not just like casual entertainment in the background, but like because some TV or movies are that, and that's fine. But some of it is like serious like insights into human nature or works of art or whatever. And so I try to look at it like that, like lessons I learned in school about like studying literature, about how to analyze, motifs and character development and stuff like that. I started trying to look at TV shows like that, and TV has stuff that even written word can't have. Things like lighting and editing and music. You get these extra layers, and I think
Yes.
great filmmakers use all those pieces to tell a story, or at least potentially can. Some stories can be more simple or stripped down, low budget. If you just film a play, plays are good. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
But anyway, my point is that there's all different sorts of art, film, literature, TV, and lately it's really been exploding. There's a lot of talent in it. There's more platforms for it, and there's so much great stuff. And you can't possibly watch all of it, much less you can't even watch all of the great stuff. I'm trying, uh, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. I think part of the point of making a list is to share the experience with other people, to make recommendations with other people, to get their recommendations, even just to think about it, even to like, reliving it, just thinking about it. It's kind of fun to reflect on the shows you've watched
Oh,
and thinking
absolutely.
about why you like one or another more. Like, sure, I like this show or that show, but if I have to make a top 10, how do I decide what gets in there? Some of that even like take some self-analysis, like what makes you like, never mind analyzing literature in general or this work of film, but also like yourself, like what is it about you or your personality or your experiences of life that draws you to one thing more or another. And anyway, I'm rambling a little bit, but
Oh, it's
that
fine.
that's part of who I am, so that's part of my introduction.
Yeah, like I know on your channel because you have a YouTube channel, Dancing Sean. You try to make quick reviews, like minute reviews, I think, right?
Yeah, my channel is still a little new, so I have a lot of potential things I could do with it. One thing I did was I covered the TV show The Boys, which I don't want to go on too much about it, but it's sort of like a superhero show, but really it's like a subversion of superhero shows. It's not the typical show that you might think it is,
Hmm?
which drew me to it. And I did pretty deep dives on that show. I started off thinking it would be kind of quick, short videos, even still, like the first one I did was 2 minutes, and by the time I got to the end, I was doing 2 hours. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah, yeah.
uh, but the on the flip side, I'm doing movie. I don't. It's not even quite accurate to say movie reviews. They're more like movie previews, and I'm doing just 1 minute videos that just give you an idea of what a movie is like. I
Mhm.
don't want to like spoil the plot, right? Like I might talk about like the genre or the tone. I might talk about the director, things that will give you an idea of what the movie is and whether or not you might like it without getting into details of the plot. So something like Star Wars, I might say it's a sci-fi movie. It's kind of an action adventure. It deals with forces of good and evil. It's got robots and aliens. I can say all that, and you can, in your mind, think, "Oh, cool, I like robots and aliens," or might think, "Ah, I don't like sci-fi." But I'm trying to give you enough to get an idea if you'll like it. But I didn't have to say anything about the plot, right? I didn't even have
Yeah.
to tell you Darth Vader. Something like
Hey,
Star
director.
Wars is so well known. That'll even be another factor I bring up. Is that even if you don't like sci-fi, you should probably see this movie because it's just part of culture. And I'm probably gonna talk more about Star Wars as we talk about our movies on this list. But anyway,
uh,
that's the idea. Is I could talk for a minute, giving you some external information about a movie without getting into the plot, just to give you an idea of what it's about, whether or not you might like it, and hopefully people have 1 minute worth of patience for that. And since there's so many movies out there, it's hard to
mhm.
pick what to watch. Even movies that are generally good, they might not be your kind of movie. So that's kind of my idea. So spend 1 minute to talk about what it's like to give you an idea if you might like it. Got about, I don't know, 30 or so far. I've done like the best picture
Nice.
nominees for the past couple years. That's a big hunk, and I try to do a few classics, a few of my favorites. I
Nice.
want to build more of a catalog and get more and more on there.
Right. So, director just joined us. His name is Director Edition, but I call him Director. We're doing good. We actually just started. We had, I knew it was going to happen, but technical issues. But we hopefully have it all set up. I have my cheesy set up for the to-do list. I wanted to get like a tier list better, but technical stuff, always fun. But anyways, we are
Better
just
get started imperfectly than to not start
exactly.
perfect. It doesn't matter if you're parked if you don't even do it. So,
But we're actually going to starting with 10. First, I want to hit up on movies, and then we're going to go over to the series. Also, forewarning, this is going to be massive possible spoilers, especially for the TV stuff. Yeah, just wanted to warn you about the spoiler. This is not spoiler free. This is spoiler death. But anyways, so
I'll try to avoid it. Like I said, I've got a lot of practice in talking about things kind of superficially, so I'll be careful not to get too spoilery.
Like, I feel like if I talk about like a death, I'm not going to name the death, but I'll be like, death of blah blah blah. Was handled not as great or was handled great. Stuff like that. But anyways, so let's start out with our top 10 movies. So Sean, what is your number 10 for the movie list?
Well, first, let me clarify. This is not necessarily. Well, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
I have a lot of stuff to say before we get into it.
Oh, absolutely.
If that's okay.
Let's do it.
First, I want to address the idea that there are different types of lists that you can make. There's a difference between what I think are the 10 best movies. Like if there's some sort of objective way to look at how well the editing and the writing and the acting and everything was done, that's going to be a little different than what I think are my 10 favorite movies, right?
That's true.
Sometimes your favorite movies are defined more about like the time that you saw them or the people you saw them with, or if it's personal to you, like someone who like visited Japan. They might see a movie about Japan. I don't know, what's the name of that movie with Bill Murray and Scarlett Johansson?
Bill Murray.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about.
Anyway, someone might really, because they visited Japan, might really relate that, and that might become one of their 10 favorite movies,
Right.
Whereas someone else might just not like Bill Murray, so no way Ghostbusters is on their list, even though everyone else thinks that's great or something. So
it says Lost in Translation, 2003.
Lost in Translation, thank you, perfect, yeah. So there's going to be lots of things for different reasons that will make something your personal favorite, and that's going to be different from like what is the best.
Mm-hmm.
And that's also going to be different from even whenever someone says like the greatest or the top or whatever, sometimes I think that even includes a certain amount of like popularity and acclaim beyond just how good it was, or much less how much you liked it, right? Because there could be like some really great, amazing movie that had amazing performances and superb direction and beautiful cinematography and all this stuff, but it was this independent movie made in Japan in 1972. No one knows about it, right? Versus another movie that is also good, but maybe not as great. I just kind of made up that scenario, right? But you can imagine another movie that like Titanic. It was just this hugely popular movie, and a lot of people might not even like it or might think it's overrated, but you can't deny the amazing effort that went into that movie.
Absolutely.
And the huge popularity that it had. And so that's going to bump it up on a list of like a great movie, maybe higher than something that is better than it or something that's more my favorite. Anyway.
Yeah. I know
Good.
I was going to say, I know that my top 10 list is some stuff that basically inspired me. to become
yeah.
a filmmaker or not. So obviously mine's going to be biased, but it's going to be like more of something that affected me personally. Well, I know you're going to go more objective toward maybe not your favorite list, but a good list that is best for probably a majority of the people.
And that's especially because what you told me going into this is we were doing 10 must-watch
Yes,
movies.
that is true.
And that's different from best or my favorite or greatest or a bunch of other categories. And there's going to be crossover. A lot of those are going to be the same. Like a lot of the greatest are going to be the best. A lot of my favorite are going to be the best or must-watches,
Yes.
And I also, so a part of why I wanted to get in all this, one, because I think it's interesting to talk about, but two, I want to clarify that my list is not necessarily going to be my favorites. Like or even what I think the best are. Like after we list these, someone's like, well, what about, Pulp Fiction? Or what about some other thing? I'm like, well, actually, if I was making a different list, that might be on there. And also, it was a little bit new. I had less than a week's notice from Eric to get ready for this. From Flint to get ready for this. So it's possible that I don't have fully thought this out, right? Like I might make a different list 2 weeks from now. Even if I came up with a quote unquote perfect list, I'd probably make a different list 2 years from now. Things evolve, my opinions evolve, new movies come out, so on. All that said, this list is not really necessarily in order. Like Eric's wanting me to start with 10, but I don't think this list is quite in order. And Eric, I sent you this list of movies, but it's so I don't know if you've put it up, if you're about to put it up. But I want to tell you, I think that I might not the 10th one on this list. I don't think it's gonna be the first one I name, if that's okay.
Okay.
I think the first one I name, I'm gonna say is. I'm gonna say, especially with everything I just now built up, I'm gonna say Wizard of Oz. Wizard of Oz is a must-watch movie.
Okay. Wait one sec. I put that into the.
And list. And it might even be higher on the list of must-watch than 10. But I think because it is such a good, I think it's such a good example of a must-watch movie. I wanted to lead off with it, wherever it ranks exactly.
Yeah.
And another thing about must-watch movies. A lot of them I already saw. Right? That's kind of the idea. Like that's part of why people think of a must-watch movie as being a must-watch movie, because you expect people to have seen it. You saw it when you were a kid, maybe even not when you were a kid, but you saw it eventually. Your friends did. Your parents saw it. Like it's something that everyone's seen. Of course you've seen it. When someone says they haven't seen it, you're like, how can you not? Even if you don't like it, who hasn't seen The Wizard of Oz?
I want to say this is even mandatory in schools. Wizard of Oz, at least. No,
maybe I maybe some schools anyway. I doubt it's like a national rule, but I don't think I saw it in school. I think I just saw it on TV when I was a kid. I wish I could remember a little bit better, but I've probably seen it over 10 times.
Yeah, I've seen it a good bit. I mean, they even made Oz another interpretation of it.
There's several spin-off movies, variations of it or whatever. It's one reason I think this should be on the list, in addition to being like, so many people have seen it. It's sort of part of our culture. Like people reference this movie all the time. I can imagine people who haven't even seen the movie probably still know the phrase, "We're not in Kansas anymore." Things like that. The idea of like the Cowardly Lion, just different concepts and images, the Wicked Witch of the West. So much stuff comes from this movie. And if you think about it, go ahead.
Director points out that he can't watch the movie anymore because of what happened on basically behind the production, which sometimes that can affect movies, on how you look at movies, which is understandable. Like if I think I did hear about a couple issues behind the scenes, I guess you could call it politics in the filming.
Maybe we can pause for a second and talk about this, especially if someone in the audience is wanting to talk about it, because it is a factor in the movies I choose. That certain, I don't want to go off too much on the idea of like woke culture or whatever, but there is this idea that we want to be more representative. We're more understanding of like the different peoples of the world. You know what I mean? And it's something I went through a while ago when I was, because like I said, I've been a fan of movies for a long time.
Mhm.
I've made a point of trying to watch like all the best pictures, all the top movies on IMDb lists, everything in American
Yeah.
Film Institute's list, and so on. And I realized over time, I was like, man, when I looked at like my, I have this constant attempt to make like my top movie list, and when I look over like my top 20, it's, it's maybe a little oversimplified, but I just going down the list, it's like this movie's about a white man, a white man, a white man, a white man, a white man. I'm like, holy crap, why are all my favorite movies about white men? Like maybe on some level I'm a white man, so I'm drawn to them, but I also realized that that's sort of what Hollywood was creating
Yeah.
and rewarding over the years. And so when I make an effort to watch all the quote best movies of all time, well, guess what they are? And uh, a lot of movies can be about sort of day-to-day life, slice of life movies about just people going through the regular world. But a lot of times those movies aren't like high intense dramas or exciting action adventure, right? Usually that type of movie is going to be about soldiers and cops, things that women haven't been allowed to do, things that minorities weren't allowed to do. And so we made movies about that stuff, and it was sort of this perpetuating cycle. Anyway, a little bit of a tangent, might
Yeah.
not quite even be what director is talking about, but it did kind of open my eyes a little to like maybe I should be watching different slices of movie, maybe I should be evaluating them differently.
He was
And
referring to what happened to Judy Garland, the main actress who plays.
right,
You know.
right. There's also factors of like how the people making a movie might be treated, and I think that is a legit factor. For example, when I saw Annie Hall, I didn't know who Woody Allen was. I didn't even know. I mean, I was maybe particularly naive. I didn't even know really Jewish meant. Does that make sense? A lot of like I don't know what word you use. Stereotypes, but stereotypes come from somewhere. There are certain aspects of Jewish people or Jewish life, or a large percent of them anyway, that are a certain way. But I didn't really get that. I know I'm not perfect, but I'm trying to point out that I think my parents and my upbringing was enough to not have any sort of preconceived prejudices in me.
Right.
Much less did I know the details of Woody Allen's life. You know what I mean? I definitely didn't know anything was going on in his kids or his wife or adoptions or marriages or cheating, any of that weird stuff that he did. I just saw Annie Hall and thought, wow, this is hilarious. It's clever. It's well made. I really love that movie. Years later, decades later, I start to learn more about his personal life. That's enough to make me think, wow, however good this movie is, do I really need to prop it up? Do I really need to call this a top 10 movie when there's so many other great movies, right? Like, do I really need to be propping up Woody Allen? And so that has slipped down my list over time for that reason. Now, with Wizard of Oz, director, I'm kind of directing this at you. My thought is that whatever kind of negative behind the scenes happened with Wizard of Oz, it's kind of in the past. We can't change it. We can't even make amends for it. No one involved in that is still alive anymore. Does that make sense? Like when Woody Allen dies, I feel a little more okay saying, hey, I like Annie Hall. Because right now, if you spend money on Annie Hall, Woody Allen gets a piece of that, and maybe we shouldn't be rewarding Woody Allen. But right now, if you watch Wizard of Oz, first of all, you're probably not even paying for it, right? It's just out there in the world. And even if you do, no one that did something bad to Judy Garland is really being rewarded for that. It's just, I don't know if that makes sense, but it's something that happened long ago enough that I don't let it affect my opinion of the movie. Now, it doesn't mean that director or an individual person, while watching it, isn't affected by that. It still might like get in your mind and keep you from appreciating it. So I get that. But hopefully, director or anyone out there listening to this also gets that Wizard of Oz is part of our culture, and it's going to be referenced, and any kind of weird details of what happened behind the scenes 100 years ago, it's not going to stop the effect and value of that movie on the world. So I don't know if director's seething over there what I say right now, if maybe I'm addressing his opinion, but those are my thoughts.
All right, so my top 10, and this actually changed just now. So I put The Dark Knight. I love The Dark Knight. I think it's one of the best superheroes ever. But you just brought up something that I just remembered. It was Jewish. And I don't know if you ever heard of this movie, but it's called Yentl?
With Barbara Streisand?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was shocked by that movie. It's kind of a musical, but it's kind of not. It talks about the Jewish religion. I don't know. I just thought it was really, really well done. It's an older film too, so.
I have to admit, I haven't seen that movie. I know the movie you're talking about,
Yeah.
but I haven't actually seen it. I think it also has Robert Redford. Am I thinking of the right one?
I think so. Give me a sec. The guy is in Homeland now.
Homeland. That's not who I'm thinking of.
He's one of the older, obviously, guys. But the movie is based off of what men, especially religious guys, perceive girls as, and how, and Barbara Streisand plays a woman who tries to go against that. She pretends to be a man, which I've seen in a movie before.
In Yentl? That's what that movie's about?
Yeah. Huh. And it's fantastic. It's really, really good.
Like I was, right? With Dustin Hoffman?
Dustin Hoffman? No, not Dustin Hoffman's in it.
I'm saying there's a movie called Tootsie.
Oh.
Stars Dustin Hoffman, and that's the basic story of that movie too.
Yeah, see, that's what I remember that. But yeah. And that's why I was like, I feel like I've seen this, but I don't. This may be the first interpretation of that. Like I said, it's pretty old. But
I do feel like I should see that movie. Yeah.
Like I said, she sings in it. She's freaking awesome. I mean, obviously she's a singer.
She's an amazing performer. In general.
And the ending, I won't ruin it, but it is so powerful. Like the acting was so damn good. It just caught me off guard. The whole movie, and like after I was done watching it, because it starts off kind of slow, ish. It's a very periodical piece in a way, but after I was done watching it, I just couldn't help but like, I mean, now I even think about it. So, and I think that's like important, if you still remember a movie.
I agree.
Highly recommend.
You have me branching off into several other thoughts, mostly centered around other movies that I plan on talking about. Real quick, if you don't mind, do you want to go to the next one?
Yeah.
Or segue towards the next one,
yes.
At least. Because you mentioned The Dark Knight. The Dark Knight was on the cusp of making my list too. Because here's another thought. I'm gonna bounce around a lot, but here's another tangent. Something I think is important to do on any kind of list is represent some amount of diversity. And now I don't just mean like a cultural diversity, although I do mean that too. But what I mean is you can't have your top 10 movies be all crime dramas or all horrors or something like that, right? I mean, I guess you can if you're a big fan of horror movies.
Yes.
But if you make a must-watch list and it's all horror movies, you're really making a must-watch horror list. You know what I mean?
Very true.
But and even if my favorite movies tend to be crime dramas or sci-fi or whatever, I mean, those aren't necessarily my favorite, but if they were, my point is I still don't think it would represent me well have only those things in my top 10 because I do like other stuff. And that's generally true, I think, of anyone and of any list you're making, unless it is for a certain genre or whatever. So, with all that in the background, I keep in mind I try to hit different bases on my list. One base that I felt like needed to be hit was superheroes. It's a huge genre.
It is.
And
it absolutely
it's been for a couple generations. Superhero movies have been getting made, and so I think another little factor I want to talk about here for a list, especially a must-watch list like this. I think you want to try to hit a couple different bases if you can, in addition to like a variety of different stuff. You also want to hit like the pioneers, like the firsts, the biggest, and also you want to get like the best and the most representative. A swirl of those. And another thing I'm trying to do here, if you're talking about must watch, especially for must watch, I think that you need to avoid R-rated stuff. If that makes sense. Like if you're just announcing to the world these are must-see movies, I think that's going to include if you're going to the movies with your girlfriend or watching it with your mom. There's going to be different audiences and crowds, and one movie might be really good, or I might really like it, but it might not be for everyone. And I think must-watch movies, for the most part, should be pretty much for everyone. Here and there might be some exceptions, but with all that in mind, again, that was a little bit of a tangent from the point I wanted to make, but the superhero movies, I was going to say, are a big genre that I think needs to be represented, and I struggled for a while which one to pick. As a default, I've always picked Superman, the original Christopher Reeve Superman from 1978, I think. And
so you said Superman, right? The original, okay.
Original Christopher Reeves, I'm pretty sure 1978 Superman. And I picked that one because it was the first really big superhero movie. There had been others made, but this one had some pretty good star power, and for its time, especially, it was pretty good special effects. And Superman, he was the first superhero. He's been the biggest. Nowadays, we kind of blown up the Avengers, and some side characters have gotten more featured. Like even Spider-Man has been pretty big. But I think Spider-Man and Batman, they're starting to overtake Superman as like the superhero.
Yeah, I
But
guess because
Superman for a
people
long
relate to
time
him.
was the most that S was one of the most iconic symbols around the world. You know what I mean? Like people like starving kids in Ethiopia knew who Superman was,
Yeah.
around the world, it was just an icon.
But he says, what do you think of Superman 2 with Richard Donner? Richard Donner's cut.
I don't know for sure that I've seen or specifically watched and compared different cuts. I thought 2 was also good, and there's parts that I even like it like more than 1. But whenever I'm making a top anything list, I'm always gonna pick, if there's like a franchise, I'm almost always gonna pick the first one,
Right.
because you wouldn't recommend someone watch Return of the Jedi if they haven't seen A New Hope. Does that make sense? You kind of need to see the first one in a series. Some movies can stand alone a little bit better. Like I think the No Way Home it'd be okay to watch that without ever watching every other Spider-Man movie that came out. And for the sake of making billions of dollars, they're better at designing movies to be able to stand on their own better. But anyway, I overall, I think I liked the first Superman better, and if I understand right, Richard Donner was the director of the first. I think Richard Donner had this idea of like 1 and 2 was like one big story, but he kind of knew he couldn't make like a 4-hour movie, so he kind of cut it in 2. But in the process of production and marketing and filming and everything, he and the producers, it kind of like lost control and had like a fight or whatever, and in the second movie someone took over and finished it, and so it might not have been his complete vision.
This is kind of like,
but I do think it is a lot of times movies that are started with a complete vision as opposed to an after the fact cash grab, they're better. Like Godfather 1 or 2 were made to be story told together.
He said that they were 75% through.
20 years later, like, hey, if we make another one, we could probably make some money off of it. But it didn't have the same sort of integral storyline intention of the original. Same thing with Superman 3 and 4 and all the others.
Richard Leonard replaced him and shot him with most of his footage.
Went off too much on Superman because I wanted to point out that the other one on the cusp of me naming was also Dark Knight, because I think Superman is like the one that gets pioneering credit. I think Dark Knight is the one that maybe is the best, or is one of the best, and one of the most popular, and also I give it some credit for pioneering. However, in the end, this is my number 9 movie. Although not necessarily in order, just the second one I'm going to mention, is Spider-Verse, Into the Spider-Verse.
Oh, so Superman is not the number 9, it's actually Spider-Verse.
Spider-Verse, yeah. Sorry, we're not talking about Superman so much, but I think Spider-Verse, one, I think it is more representative. It's not another white man, right? They get a black boy and a girl, and they also have a variety of different animated styles, right? So not only, because that's another category that I think should be represented in a top 10, animated films are huge. And what I had in there at first was Toy Story, because that's pretty well known, pretty acclaimed. It was the first of not just the franchise's Toy Story, but also Pixar is just pumping out great movie after great movie. It only had 10 slots, and Spider-Verse gets to cover both animated and superhero.
That makes sense.
And I think it has more diverse representation, and even within animated, it's covering different styles. So it's my number 9 pick. It covers a lot of bases.
That makes sense. I surprisingly have not seen that, and I've heard nothing but insanely good things about
Eric,
it.
it's a must watch.
I know. So obviously I'm gonna have to watch that.
By the way, on the side, I'm gonna write down Yentl. You write down Spider-Verse.
Yes.
Give ourselves some homework.
So for my number 1, so when I look at the shows or the things I was like debating about, one of them was actors. And one of my favorite actors of all time was Robin Williams. And then I debated about which one was probably his best role, or one of his best roles. And there's other factors that went into this, but Good Will Hunting. I think he did an incredibly good job. Also, Matt Damon and Matt Damon and Ben Affleck both wrote that, which were actors that were independent. So therefore, it's like more of an independent film that had a really good actor, because Robin Williams also was known for like comedy ish, and he got to show another side of him. I think this movie is just incredible, overall, especially for independent people. So that was my number 9 because of that. What's up?
I think it's a solid pick. I don't think I would personally include it as a must-watch, but I wouldn't argue anyone having it as one of their favorites. And it's not a terrible must-watch either. It's a good story, kind of like it's sort of a. I say this about Rocky. It's one of my favorite movies, and people think of it as like this boxing, goofy Sylvester Stallone movie, but that movie won Best Picture.
Rocky,
It only had 2 fights. The whole movie only had 2 fights, and he lost both of them. It was really a drama. It was really a romance. And really, the story, to me, the story behind it is the American dream. The idea, he was just this guy in the streets trying to pay his bills, and all of a sudden, he's like a champion. And it's kind of like the American dream, that if you work hard, you don't even have to be that smart. You don't have to have rich parents. The idea is if you just like dedicate yourself to something, you can be great at it. And that's kind of the idea of Good Will Hunting also. We see like these young kids with potential, but they're not dedicating themselves. And it's kind of what Ben Affleck and Matt Damon did, in their personal lives. So anyway,
absolutely. So, number 8. What is your number 8?
I'm going to still branch off what we were talking about before.
Okay.
Wait, where was I? Let me make sure I'm going to say the right thing here. This is a few I could say, but what I want to point out, because it's a little on theme with what we said already, is Jojo Rabbit.
So I've never heard of this. Is this recent?
It's about 5 or so years ago.
Okay. I haven't been keeping up with a lot of newer stuff, unfortunately, which that will affect my I won't have any like super news things unless it's TV series. But so, anyways, I've never heard of this, and it sounded interesting. And then it's
not like a sleeper indie film. It was a big production. It had Scarlett Johansson and Sam Rockwell, and it also had Theon from Game of Thrones.
Oh, nice.
And Taika Waititi, I'm sure you know him. Like, his name is weird to say. I'm pretty sure I'm saying it right, but he's done a million things, especially recently. He did. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Possibly.
He did What We Do in the Shadows, which is a movie and a TV show. He did one of the Thor Avenger movies. He's just done a bunch of stuff, Eric. Yeah. He's big. You should know him. He's doing that current show, Our Flag Means Death. It's like a pirate comedy sort of TV show, which is really acclaimed and good. I like it. I watched it. And anyway, he mostly does comedy type stuff, but he mixes in like a lot of
I actually never saw Free Guy yet. Sorry.
Yeah?
He said he's the bad guy in Free Guy, but I haven't seen that yet.
Oh, I haven't either, yeah.
I've heard it's really funny and good about an NPC, basically.
Has starred in a few things, but he's really making an impact behind the screen. He's really doing... he has another TV show called Reservation Dogs, which is like a play on Reservoir Dogs, these kids on a Native American reservation. Anyway, I could go on. You got to check out anything he does. I haven't seen... I think I've seen almost everything he's done, and it has all been at least good, and he's had multiple great things, including Jojo Rabbit. And Jojo Rabbit is the setup, just so you have an idea, Eric. Here's my 1 minute preview. It's set in World War II in Germany, and the central character is a little kid who is basically being indoctrinated into Nazis. You can imagine... Like, every single person in Germany in World War II wasn't just this evil monster. There were some people that were just kids or wives or Jews or arrested or fled, or there's this huge range of what's going on. And the idea in this story is that Scarlett Johansson is... I'm giving a little bit away here, but this comes out if you watch it, that she's trying to work against the Nazis, but obviously she has to do this secretly. And she has a little boy, and her little boy is just required by the Nazi government to go to like these Nazi Boy Scouts, basically, and are basically teaching him to be a Nazi. And on one hand, this is kind of dark and sad and scary, and I think important to see. I think this movie is a good thing for people to see. It's good to see how what we teach our kids affects them and society, and how dangerous it could be to teach them the wrong things. Right. But Taika Waititi is kind of presenting this in sort of a lighthearted manner. And maybe this movie is on eggshells sometimes, because you don't want to treat Nazis and the Holocaust and the war and all, you don't want to treat it too lightheartedly.
Mhm.
But I think he does a good job of mocking Hitler. The little boy, Jojo Rabbit, he gets that nickname. I won't give it away, but he gets the nickname
Yeah.
Jojo Rabbit. You'll see it. It's good. Everyone should see it. It's really good. But he has an imaginary friend, and his imaginary friend, Hitler. And Hitler is kind of a buffoon character. And I think it does. You don't want to like make light of the whole scenario, but I
Mhm.
do think it is good. I do think it strips the power of a tyrant to mock them, and that's one thing that this show does. But it does a bunch of other stuff. It really has these really tense moments. It has these really touching moments. It has these really funny moments. Um, the uh, the plot thickens. This is the biggest spoiler. If you're worried about spoilers, close your ears for a quick second. Because I'm just gonna say
I'm joking, it's
the
fine.
plot thickens because Scarlett Johansson is hiding a young Jewish girl in the house, and
Okay.
Jojo Rabbit, who's being trained by the Jews to hate, trained by the Nazis to hate Jews, discovers the girl and realizes, wait, she's just a girl, and it goes from there. But anyway,
By the way, that
it's a really
reminds
good
me
movie.
of, which is a dark but comedy. I don't know, Inglorious Bastards, especially the
Yeah, yeah.
interesting. I don't know. This reminded me of that, like where they're hiding a patch of Jewish, and that scene is
It was a
one of the
common
most
thing in
brilliant
Germany.
scenes supposedly
Yeah,
in cinema. You know, storytelling
yeah.
wise. There's like reviews about like that particular scene. But anyways, sorry.
Yeah, I think Jojo Rabbit is one movie. There aren't many of these, and I tried to put them on my list here. That I think everyone should see. I think the world would be better off if everyone saw Jojo Rabbit. However much I like Spider Verse, or however much I like The Princess Bride, or whatever, those are movies that are well made, or I like them, or they're very popular. The part of culture you should know. But I don't think they make us better people by watching them. But Jojo Rabbit will make everyone a better person. If everyone watches Jojo Rabbit, the world will be better off. That's
Mhm.
like. By the way, it was nominated for Best Picture too, Eric. That's another reason I thought you're more likely to hear it. And I want to give it some credence. It's not
Yeah,
some
yeah.
weird movie I came up with. It was like a known, popular, acclaimed movie.
So my top eight was, yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned it, Toy Story, except I personally like three a little bit more, probably because I used to film action figures, and
Yep,
I don't know,
yep.
this really hit home with me. This particular one, um, especially the end, you know, where he's like giving the toy away, to somebody else. But one was done so well, and I couldn't believe that three, to me, exceeded that. You know, they just got better. You know, Pixar, and I wanted to make sure to put a Pixar movie in general, just because I think Pixar deserves it. You know, to be on a list in general, and anybody could watch it, like a kid, obviously, or a parent. So
I'm all about Toy Story. I like I said, I was on the cusp of including it in my top 10 most watch, and I think it's in my top 20 like personal favorites. I think it's in my top 20. And if I was gonna make a all-time greats, I think it might make my top 20 there. Like only because the nature of a list that I felt like I could cheat two categories by listing Spider-Man did it beat out Toy Story.
Horna just joined, and he says, something about a lie. Maybe more people would badmouth it, which I assume that's maybe about the other JoJo, maybe. But
What did they say? What I didn't hear what you said.
that's a lie. No one would change except maybe more people to badmouth it. Three also can.
Yeah, maybe I'm more optimistic about human nature.
I am too. I am kind of on your side. I feel like sometimes
I
people do need
suppose
to
that
see
there
it.
are some people who are already negative and stubborn enough in their life that they might not adjust. But I think anyone who is close or on a fence or young, it would impact their life in a way that the world would change.
Mm-hmm. So now we're down to the top 7. By the way, Horns, we're going over movies right now. We're going to go over series afterwards. So what is your top 7?
Let's see. At this point, I want to clarify for people maybe just coming in that this list that we're discussing isn't necessarily in order. And I'm going to name now the one that I had in the 10th spot, but I didn't necessarily want to start off with it.
Okay.
It's called Spellbound. And it's
This
a
is a
documentary.
foreign, right? Oh, documentary. Okay, I knew it was something.
Documentary. I'm pretty sure it's from the year 2000. I think there might be some older movie from the 70s or something called Spellbound, but this is a documentary about kids going to a spelling bee. And one, I wanted to include a documentary in the top 10. Kind of like I said before, there's different, you want to hit different bases with the top 10 list. I don't
Hmm?
want to just list 10 sci fi movies, right? And I think documentaries are a significant slice of films.
They are.
And this one in particular shares a lot in common with a lot of, quote, normal movies because it's kids in a spelling bee have like character development, right? It's kind of like an ensemble cast,
Uh-huh.
and you see the characters grow a little, and you also get these moments of suspense, right? You're kind of building up the suspense. There's like these climactic moments as they get further in the spelling bee, and it's also entertaining because kids can be funny. There, I wish I
Yeah.
could remember a little better, but I think they're all like be 12 or 14ish years old, and some of them can say some funny things. And here's the real thing about it though, is
Mhm.
it's on the surface, it's about a spelling bee and it's got some entertaining elements to it. Really, it's about families and America. Really, what you're doing is you're seeing these different kids that come from different socioeconomic backgrounds, different parents, the parents have different styles and how they handle or manage or raise their kids, and it's really a good sort of insight into what America is like, the different types of people there are, the different types of families there are, different types of parenting styles, and how personalities of kids can develop, and on and on. I really think that this is a movie that has climbed higher and higher over time for me.
Mhm.
I used to have it in my top 20 list. And I'm going to clarify this a few times because I have like a list for myself, if you will, but it's kind of a mesh of these different things we've talked about, like
Yeah.
my favorites versus what I think is best, what I think is a must watch or culturally important to see or be aware of, mixed with what's the other factor I talked about? Best, favorite, must watch.
The rating, like, or
Mm.
like family friendly or
Uh,
something.
yeah, acclaim, popularity, all these different
Yeah.
variables, all kind of I've kind of tried to compromise them all for my top list. And I've had this one in my top 20 representing the documentary genre. Oh, I guess that's another factor, by the way, is checking different boxes, if you will.
Yeah.
And I've had this one that represented documentary genre for like a long time, for like since I saw it 20 years ago, and I've been keeping up with this, trying to have like a list of top movies or whatever. But it has crept into my top 10, maybe even top 5.
That's cool.
It's just, aside from representing documentaries, aside from being a must watch or how good it is or anything else, I just think it's a really good movie that everyone should see.
So mine is, this is more on the non-family side. So a factor was, directors, directors, me being a director, that influenced me was Tarantino. And I was torn on this one because I think for me, his top two are probably Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. Pulp Fiction
I agree.
probably was technically his best, has the best storytelling, because Reservoir Dogs was it was his first big one. I think he actually technically made something prior to it.
Fiction was his first big one. Reservoir Dogs wasn't that big. He got bigger
Well, let me
after
phrase
Pulp
that.
Fiction.
It was his first big budget.
Yeah.
Like, is it still independent? But but Pulp Fiction, he's been around for a couple. Like, this is his fourth film, if I'm correct. I debate if Jackie Brown was actually his fourth, but whatever. It's around there. But
I'd be wrong, Eric, but I'm pretty sure Reservoir Dogs was first, Pulp Fiction was second. I don't. If he had another one before, I don't know what it was.
Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, I know was in there. I thought there was another one in there.
Jackie Brown was after Pulp Fiction. I think.
Okay,
Dogs,
I always get that confused. But whatever the case, I thought those were Reservoir Dogs was 92. Okay. Pulp Fiction, especially I actually did what do you call that when like you remake a short or a movie, a parody. I did that at Pulp Fiction. Never was released, but it was a lot of fun. I did it with one of the actors that's going to be one of the actors that I'm interviewing next week, Dylan Scatella.
Cool.
But anyways,
no, Dylan. I like Dylan.
Oh yeah, Dylan's great. Independent actors, but yeah, so Pulp Fiction went to that just because it's probably just a tad bit better. Like I said, I'm really torn on that one, but I'm just gonna put Pulp Fiction for mine, just because I respect Tarantino, and he affects
Pulp
me
Fiction,
a lot.
I'm with you. That Pulp Fiction is one that has just slipped out of my top 10, and I gave strong consideration to including it here. I only didn't because and the same thing. I
97.
would
Okay.
struggle between Pulp Fiction and Reservoir Dogs. I think I like Reservoir Dogs more, but Pulp Fiction had more like an impact. It's more part of culture. Like
Yes. Yes.
if someone hasn't seen Pulp Fiction, you're like, what? But if someone hadn't heard of Reservoir Dogs, I can understand that. Does that
Yeah.
make sense? I think
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction is a
Absolutely.
little bit more of a the sake of a must-watch list is higher on there. And but anyway, I think that it nitpicking at why it didn't necessarily make my top 10. Like I think it's good and I like it and I respect it on any list. But I don't know if I want to watch Pulp Fiction with my mom. Does that make sense? I don't know. It's
Absolutely. That's
I think over the
completely
years,
understandable.
Quentin Tarantino has never quite lived up to those first two, in my opinion, to those
Mhm.
first two movies.
Yeah.
He keeps making good movies, but I
Yes.
think those first two were great, and I think he's too caught up with being hyper violent, and he throws the N word around a little bit too much, and it's enough that I didn't include it in my top 10, but
Makes sense. I
he
said
definitely was very impactful on
yes. He was.
filmmaking and has a unique style and has turned out a lot of movies over generations at this point, but. So let's see. What am I gonna name next?
Outside of The Walking Dead, Hero says that I'm not being interviewed as an actor. Of course, you're not. Even though Horns just letting know I stream with him. Shanto, he's a regular person I stream with. Yeah, number 7. No, I'm sorry, not number 7. Number 6. We're almost halfway.
6 now. Yep. Okay. All right. I'm gonna say Moonlight.
You say Moonlight?
Moonlight. It's another relatively new movie. I think it's on the poster right behind me.
I was about to say, yeah.
By the way.
I don't think I've seen this.
And it's also from around 5 years ago, and it's another one that is. I can imagine you having not heard of it, but I'm putting it on the must-watch list. You should see it. One, it has an interesting little moment that happened with it. The year it came out, there was another movie called La La Land, which is also a good movie. It starred Ryan Gosling. It starred a bunch of people. It was a big production. It was kind of like a musical, and it was about performers. It was about an actor and a musician in LA, and so that I can see people who are like movies and into movies in the industry might have some relate to some of the stories in there and will understand what was going on behind the big production of it all. And it swept the Golden Globes. It was a favorite to win Best Picture.
Okay.
Moonlight that same year started to have this kind of it started to creep up in critics' opinions, and people were starting to wonder if maybe it would win instead of La La Land after all. So it comes time to announce Best Picture at the ceremony.
Yep.
And they open a card and say La La Land, it's a mistake. They read the wrong. They had the wrong card and read the wrong name. And the producers and cast of La La Land, they all come up on stage, and suddenly the host is like, "Wait, hold on, stop! Wrong movie. Moonlight. Moonlight won." And everyone's like, "What?" It was like this really crazy moment at the Academy when he announced the wrong winner for Best Picture. But the people in La La Land were very like, "Oh, yeah, our bad. Let us get out of the way. Moonlight was great. Please come give your speech." And they.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it was one of the craziest. At this point, maybe the second craziest, but at that time, it was the craziest thing that ever happened at the Oscars. But anyway, the story is kind of split. This is a very minor spoiler. If you care, maybe don't listen. But it's not like giving away what happens in the plot, but just the structure of the movie. It's basically follows the story of a boy at approximately age 8, 18, 28, like maybe he's 9, 17, and 20, whatever, but just 3 different stages of his life. And it deals with all sorts of themes of sexuality, poverty, education, parental child relationships. It has some very powerful. I mean, it won Best Picture. It won for a reason. It was
the director was saying that Ampus that was like his best production design or his last production design.
Anyway, yeah, I think it is a must see for a number of reasons. One, because it was just a really good drama with really good performances and really good directing and editing, and that, I mean, there were several moments where just the use of sound or camera angles, the lighting, it just was impressing me from a filmmaking perspective throughout, and it was impressing me from like a how it's hitting me emotionally, and the insights it's given into me to the different lives that people are living in the world. And again, like I've said, I don't want to, I want to be clear. There's a bunch of reasons I'm including this, but one of them is that I don't want to list 10 movies about white men in my must watch list. I want to represent some different things.
Yeah.
But but I do want to clear, aside from like trying to be, diverse in my representation, this is still a really great movie. And here's the thing. There's a lot of really great movies, and it's hard to pick. It's hard to narrow down to 10. We talked about leading up to this, like, I don't know if I can narrow it down to 10, Eric. I think I sent you a list of 30 freaking TV shows. We're trying to do 5, And so when you have all these really great things and you're trying to pick them out, it's hard to figure out why to pick one over another. And I like the idea that we're talking about ones that barely missed it, or ones that we're reminded of, that might have been in our top 20, didn't make top 10 or whatever. But my point is that if I have this pool of 50-ish that are all worthy of being top 10, I want to try to not accidentally pick 10 that are about white men. Does that make sense? I want to try to have a little bit of representation. And this one, even aside from that, I rate this around my top 25 or 30, like in my overall list, aside from like our must watch. And it's been creeping up over time too, like the more I think about it.
Nice. So my next one is, I love this writer. And it's funny because he does a horror, Shaun of the Dead, which I loved and I thought was really, really good. But I think I technically like Hot Fuzz better. Edgar Wright.
Right.
So I include this one just because everything about it is just really well done. It's comedy mixed with mystery, great acting, great directing. There's a lot of pluses to this one, and that's why I pick Hot Fuzz as my number 6. I feel like we saw this together, possibly, but anyways,
might have, yeah. I did love Hot Fuzz. By the way, I want to point out that I didn't represent horror on my list, partly because I'm not really a horror fan. So, despite trying to hit all the different bases, even someone who is a horror fan, I don't think you should make your must-see movies a list of 10 horror movies, right? Yeah. That's really a list of must-see horror movies, not must-see movies. But if you are a horror fan, it makes sense to have at least 1 or 2 on your list. But I'm not, so I didn't. But I kind of expected you would, and Shaun of the Dead is a good pick. But I agree with you. Even though I don't like horror, I did like Shaun of the Dead because I do like, what's his name? What's the guy's name that made that movie? He's made a few movies.
Edgar Wright?
You're right, yeah. But I did like Hot Fuzz, and I will say, I generally am not a big fan of action movies.
Yeah.
What Hot Fuzz was basically doing is parodying action movies. Like, if you can make an action movie well, it's usually one of the best movies of all time. But just action movies are a dime a dozen. Every month another one comes out, and there's like more explosions and cars jumping bridges, and it's just a bunch of nonsense that isn't. I mean, to be fair, there's a lot of talent that goes into those stunts and those action scenes and all that. I want to give credit to the effort that's put into,
especially back then versus like in the 90s versus 2000. They use green screen now. Back then, like Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, they actually had real stunt people like do some stupidly insane things that were like the Terminator 2, that motorcycle scene where he jumps off into the canal. That was real. I mean, obviously they enhanced the bike so it could actually do that, but it was still a real stunt. And I give props to people who now would just do a green screen of that, So, anyways.
But even the green screen process is still a lot of effort, a lot of people with a lot of expertise working at, and I don't want to take away from their efforts. But usually, most action movies, they're not changing the world. They're not winning Best Picture. They're not hitting me emotionally. They're not pioneering very much, When they do those things, they become some of the greatest movies of all time. But usually they don't. Usually what they do is they make $40 million. You know what I mean? And, okay, I don't need another one of those. So,
now, mind you, also, an action movie that's really good, really a drama with a lot of action. But the core is drama.
Yep.
Action to be action. Of course, not going to win Best Picture, like you said, just because of it's like almost like fanboy action, ness. All right,
Okay,
so
before I go off too much ragging action movies that I love how Hot Fuzz parodied.
yes.
Let's go to the next one.
So number 5.
Was it on me now?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. I'm gonna say at this point Casablanca.
All right. Give me one second.
Casablanca is. I will say here. Let me give you a little personal background on my thoughts here. When I first really started getting into movies, I tended to not like those old black and white staged movies of the ilk of Casablanca. Movies that a lot of times are thought of as like these classic, must-see, all-time great sort of movies. Citizen Kane, Maltese Falcon, all those types of movies. Like, I kind of like rolled my eyes at them. Now, to be fair, I hadn't seen most of them, so I was kind of prejudging them. But even after I did see some of them, I often, after watching them, I was like, what's the big deal? You know, that was kind of like my thought afterwards. And some of them, like Citizen Kane, I realized that the big deal is that when it came out, it was revolutionary.
Mm-hmm.
There was all sorts of film techniques, makeup, stuff now that we just take for granted because of those movies. They kind of established these filmmaking techniques, kind of even like within the industry, giving the director more control over the movie, and all sorts of things that they were doing that when you watch now don't seem like a big deal, but at the time when it came out were really good or really important or whatever. But on top of that, another thing that I realized that one thing about them that I was a little, I don't know, disappointed or frustrated with, and I even referenced this earlier, the idea that film as opposed to books to do things. Like one thing a book can do really easily is get you inside someone's thoughts. And it's hard for a movie to do that. Maybe if it's a really good director and a really good performer, you might do that. Or sometimes you can, I don't know, cheat. Maybe it's too negative, but you can use narration. But you have to figure out a way to convey what someone is thinking in a movie. But in a book, you just read, it just says what they're thinking. It's really easy to do it, you know. But in a book, it's really hard to physically describe a setting. If you want, like, I don't know, the image of me on the screen right now, just think about like my beard and like the posters behind me and the shirt I'm wearing and the headphones, the little reflection coming off one of the posters and the all the details of the image you're seeing. And it's not a particularly complicated image, just me, you know, on a camera with the posters behind me. But think how long it would take to write all that out, right? It would, but pages and pages maybe, you know. But you see in 1 second on film, it's instantly, in a split second, all of it is instantly conveyed. So pros and cons. Anyway, not even getting into what movies can do that books can't, like music, editing, lighting, camera angles, all this kind of stuff that you get to play around with. And I felt like a lot of those old Hollywood movies, they didn't do that. They just like had a camera, they were just sitting still in a room, and two people that were like slightly angled toward the camera instead of each other, you know, like at this sort of compromise angle to face each other and the camera, would just speak back and forth at each other. And they weren't really using the film medium, they were just filming a play. And that kind of frustrated me until I realized, wait a minute, plays are good. Romeo and Juliet is one of the most important works of literature of all time. Plays are good, even if a play doesn't use even if a movie doesn't use every aspect, every tool at its disposal, doesn't mean that the story being told isn't valuable, that the actors aren't performing well, that these classic movies that don't have the filmmaking flair of modern technology still good. It doesn't mean that they weren't clever or emotional or whatever else. And so realizing that and watching Casablanca again, it started to grow on me. And then I started to realize even more it was kind of a powerful story, and it had some very emotional moments and some very clever dialogue. I wish I knew better, but I bet Quentin Tarantino loves Casablanca for some of the clever dialogue that it has. But,
he loves a lot of old stuff, like stuff that we may not have even heard of. He tries to do.
He likes a lot of crappy '70s movies, to be fair, but but he probably also likes the actual classics too.
Yeah.
Anyway, I understand a lot of people maybe being averse to watching Casablanca. Some old black and white movie. But the thing is, even if you watch it and you don't like it, I still feel like it's a must watch. I still feel like you need to be familiar with that story. It's too much a part of our culture. Even if you don't like sci-fi, you should still see Star Wars. Even if you don't like superheroes, you should still see Superman. They're just pieces of our culture. I even if someone isn't Christian or hasn't read the Bible, you still know who Jesus is. There's
Yeah.
still like pieces of the world you should be familiar with.
Mm-hmm. He was saying that it's a good choice. This is director. But he's more of a Citizen Kane guy.
I have one other sort of classic acclaimed movie on my list. Well, at least one other. I started off with Wizard of Oz, and I see Citizen Kane too. I feel like I'm torn. I think that I like Casablanca more, and I can see that Citizen Kane maybe was even a more impactful movie. But I do think Casablanca is a little more entertaining. It's more, I don't know. It's a legitimate debate, no matter what.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, there's a bunch. I easily could have made this whole list could have been all-time classic type movies, but I don't want to ignore the superhero movies, the animated movies. So I picked Casablanca to kind of fit that spot. Citizen Kane didn't quite make it for me.
It's funny. He actually also brings up a silent movie from the 1925 Ben-Hur, the 1925 version. I think that there was another remake, if I had to guess, because I don't remember it being that old. But that's
I think around 50 something. There a hugely successful Ben-Hur movie with Charlton Heston, and it was a big budget. It made a bunch of money. It got nominated for a bunch of awards. I don't know. I'm less inclined to pick that one than I don't think that one quite movie. All right, let me think.
Yeah, Heston from 1959.
What I'm trying to say, there's a sort of spectacle to it, and on one hand, that's a positive thing, and it takes a lot of effort. But on the other hand, I don't care as much about spectacle as I care about theme and emotion and etc. If that makes sense. So. Also, Ben-Hur is a little bit more religiously based, which isn't as important to me. I think it's reasonable for anyone to have it on their list, but it's. I used to have it in maybe even as high as top 50, but in my like top 100.
You never saw the 1925 version, right?
I haven't seen that old version.
He says that one's actually better.
Gets more credit for the effort that went into it because there was less filmmaking experience at that time.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't watched too many of that generation. That those low end numbers, like the 1920s, 1930s. But I bet you some of them are really good. We just never seen them.
Like another one from that era that I might pick would be Mutiny on the Bounty, and maybe It Happened One Night. Those are maybe one of the Charlie Chaplin movies. Those are some from that. If I were going to pick one, I would pick all that. Now, to be fair, I haven't seen the Ben-Hur one, but there's a lot to pick from there, and I'm kind of compromising how important I think they are culturally, with how much I personally like them. There's all these factors involved.
Yeah. All right.
Came up with Casablanca.
So one of my for my top 5, because it's like top 5, an important factor for me is I just don't do make films, independent films, but I love a lot of animations, especially the Japanese culture, Japanese animation, and one of the most influential or best, I think, animators of all time was Hayao Miyazaki. I was torn on this because technically Spirited Away is probably his best film. Or arguably, won Academy Awards. It kind of got him more known in the US. But I actually like Kiki's Delivery Service a lot more. I guess I related more because it's just about a little girl who's trying to live her life. I think she wound up doing witchy stuff, which I guess could be debatable, but it's just a fantasy story, of a little girl. And his animation was still really good by, of that time period. I know the American voice actor, or who does the American voice actor, is Kirsten Dunst. But
I didn't know that.
But yeah, like I said, it probably should be Spirited Away, but I'm going to put Kiki's Delivery Service just because of a personal, that's how I kind of found him.
I did, by the way, when thinking about the animated slot, I considered Spirited Away, and I consider my neighbor Totoro.
I did think about that one too.
Yeah, I think the Spirited Away is like the bigger, more successful one, if you will. But yeah. I think I liked Totoro better. I haven't seen Grave of the Fireflies, and I bet if I saw it, that might be the one I picked.
I've heard that movie is extremely depressing. I haven't seen it, but I've heard it. I can't remember.
I own it and haven't watched it.
Yeah. I should watch it too.
I know that it's kind of dark. To be in the right mood, and I wonder if we had seen it, if we might pick that as his actual best one, but we might not include it because it's too dark. But I mean, I included some other dark ones. I considered showing those list also.
Yeah, I think this is like the most lighthearted, like actually lighthearted, Kiki. But
It's
I
also
mean,
worth noting, I think Princess Mononoke might have done more to bring Miyazaki
it did, but I was
to greater heights than Spirited Away.
what?
Again, you know
Yeah,
better than me, but
no,
that's a
you're right.
perspective I have.
So I watched that, and I remember the 3D turning me off. Every time I see a 3D animation, it has to like feel like it's part of the world, and it felt like it was off the world. That was just me
Princess
personally.
Mononoke?
Yes, yes. The
Yeah, I agree.
monsters.
I agree.
But it's not his fault. I mean, there were during that time. That's when 3D was starting to come about, and he probably did the best he could with that. You know, so.
It
But
also kind of makes sense to have the spirits be a different animation style. Basically, it makes them be like from another world. But I
yeah,
agree. It took me out a little bit from
yeah.
him.
I
But
mean, like I said, that's a personal thing. Some people may have not cared or realized it, but I just remember, you know, I was like, oh, it's a better version of this 3D, but it's still off. You know, throws me a little off. And Spirited Away, I think, did it right, if I'm correct. The 3D implemented. He still does a lot of 2D, and that's what makes him brilliant. But anyways, so you know, overall, you know, the Miyazaki films is 5. I just personally picked Kiki, but I could see Spirited Away or My Neighbor Totoro, which was one of his first, I think. My Neighbor Totoro. But now down to the 4th.
all right, here I'm gonna pick another one that you might not have heard of. I think this is even more of a sleeper than Jojo Rabbit and Moonlight, which I don't think are really sleepers. I think Spellbound's a real sleeper,
Yeah.
but sleeper might be too negative. I don't mean to imply that it's boring. I mean that it's not well known. Eighth grade is what I'm trying to spit out here.
8th grade.
Also from just a few, maybe 5-ish years ago. And it was directed by Bo Burnham, who's a stand-up comedian or I don't know, performer. He's done all kinds of stuff. He's an interesting guy. And this movie is about a girl in 8th grade. And I think that it is fundamentally a coming of age story, which is also sort of a slice of film that I think should be represented. There's a huge number of coming of age movies. One that I have in like probably my normal quote unquote overall whatever personal top 10 list is The Graduate. A lot of people might think of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You know, these movies are Say Anything is another one, and I'm gonna think of ones like from when I was coming of age. They hit me, but there's probably American Pie. You know, there's a wide variety of coming age movies.
Yeah,
and a lot of them are very popular. Some of them are more comedic or more serious. And you know, newer generations are going to have their versions. Older generations will have theirs. But 8th grade is one that I think is really good for a number of reasons. In addition to like filling this spot of coming of age movies, but I also think it's from the perspective of a girl, and I think most of the most popular and well-known coming of age movies are boys. Not all, but most of them. And so I like the idea of one about a girl. And also, what I really like about this movie, it was even more true a few years ago when it came out, is it does a better job than most any other media of representing how technology is part of our regular lives. Like, it's a bit of a challenge for screenwriters in this modern time to write plots where people can't just Google something or just call someone. Does that make sense? Like, so many plots of movies from the 80s and 90s and before, obviously, the dilemma wouldn't be there. Someone could just like call someone on their phone or just look something up on the internet. That's part of our world now. But most movies and TV shows, even if they take account for it when they write their plots, right? They find a way that someone doesn't have their phone on them or the information is available, whatever. But they still don't account for how we live our lives, whether we like it or not. Like a lot of people maybe are I don't know, suspicious or frustrated with modern technology. But the fact is, we all have it in our pocket. We all have these phones, and we use it to look up menus of restaurants. We use it to schedule movies, to buy tickets, to call our friends, to let people know that we're safe or that our car broke down, or tell a joke or flirt with a girl or on and on. It's just part of our lives. For better or worse, it is a part of our life that we constantly use. And I'm sure some people are out there like, well, I don't need a phone. I'm not on my phone all the time. But probably people watching a stream right now, like our audience probably is more likely to. And And even people. I mean, my grandmother was all over the internet. She loved the fact that she could send an email to her kids and get pictures. Like, there's so much value to technology, and it's so integrated into our lives. And for the most part, it hasn't been integrated into modern films, modern TV and movies. Don't account for the fact that people check before you get up from the dinner table or get into your car. You check your phone. It's a thing you do. And eighth grade does. It's part of the movie. It's part of the world that this girl has a phone and she looks at Facebook. She's worried about what her friends are going to think about her. She's records a little YouTube video of herself talking about her eye makeup. You know, it's this girl trying to fit into the world, and it shows what technology plays in her world. And it does a good job of, like, it you get little bits of like the other kids in school and the teachers and the parents and everything kind of revolving around this. And it's sorry, I'm going on too much about it, really. But I want to point out, aside from the that I like coming of age stories, and I think this one does a really good job of accounting for modern technology, also is really well made from a filmmaking perspective. Eric, you will love it from the just the types of edits that they do. Like, they do such a good job of basically telling a joke by cutting to the next image. Like, it doesn't take a line of dialogue even, or they just like just cutting from one image to the next. Like, oh my god, that's so good. They do it so many times. It's really good for a million reasons.
That's
This is
awesome.
another movie, I'll point out, by the way, like Jojo Rabbit, that I think if everyone saw this movie, they'd be better off. At first, there was like a little controversy because the movie got rated R. And I thought that was ironic. A lot of people thought that was ironic because it's really for young girl. It's really, the audience for this is like 12, 14-year-old girls. That's really who this is meant for. And I started realizing, well, it's meant for like boys too. It's meant for young, young boys. I think it's weird it's rated R because I think every young boy and girl should see this, and probably their parents should too, and their teachers. And at the point when every young boy, young girl, parent, and teacher should watch a movie, well, pretty much that means everyone should watch the movie. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah,
this
no,
is just a great movie that everyone should watch, and I think the world would be better off for it.
awesome. So for my number 4 pick, I mean, you actually pointed this out earlier. I'm really big into horror, and I thought that my list doesn't have horror on it, so I just had to make a slot for it. I guess you could argue it was Shaun of the Dead, but like I didn't put that on my list just because I thought I'm not gonna put the same director twice. Technically, that's like a factor. But what movies? What horror genre was? It's hard to pinpoint the best because when it comes right down to it, horror movies are not that great. They're awesome, they're fun, but they're not really that well made if you like think about it. Like Jason, Jason just goes around and kills people. I freaking love Jason. He's probably one of my favorite villains. Why? Doesn't make any sense. He's just a guy running around. Freddy Krueger's creepy as hell, and that concept is really creepy. But still, it's not. You could argue it's not well made technically, especially as a standpoint. Saw was debatable. I actually love Saw, and I think the twist and all that is really good. The first one is debatable, but I admit some people do like the first one. What were you going to point out before I say it? My big
I
one.
don't want to cut you off, but before you announce that, I want to point out also that at this point, so many horror movies have been made. There's even subgenres, right? It
Yes.
might be hard to
Yeah,
pick
yeah, like a
just one,
slasher, or there's I guess suspense.
There's crossover to thriller.
Thriller, yeah. But one I think that is very well made for its time, and obviously they made like a million others. Was Halloween. Halloween, I think, is like one of the best well-made horror films back then. Every time Halloween came, I would watch it. And it has like a solid character. I guess you could argue it's Jamie Lee Fox, but it's actually the Doctor. Has a solid villain, and his motivation, like Jason, doesn't have exactly a motivation just to kill people. But Halloween's trying to go after his sister and kill off his bloodline for whatever reason, and anybody who gets in his way, he kills too. But at least he has a goal. So that's why I'm going to put Halloween as a 4th pick, for the Halloween genre. Or Halloween genre.
It definitely launched a genre, and it was one of the founding movies of the genre, along with, like you said, Nightmare on Elm Street and Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Also, I'll point out, by the way, that if I were going to pick a horror movie, a couple that I would consider would be The Shining. I think that.
Yeah, actually, I forget. Yeah, that's actually very great. You know, it's not exactly an evil villain. It's a person who becomes evil, and it's creepy. That anybody could become him.
And it will scare you even if it's not necessarily violent. Like I don't know for sure what it's rated, but I can
It's rated
see,
R because there's a couple
okay, yeah,
rough scenes, I guess you could say. I mean,
it's not dependent on like violence,
no,
like a lot of other horror movies are to be scary to you.
I did actually consider like a Hitchcock
in the beginning
film.
when the kid's doing a red rum thing, I'm like, oh my god, what's happening here?
But you know, like Rear Window or a couple of Hitchcock movies, you could argue. So I guess Psycho. I never got into Psycho, but you know those.
I don't think those quite qualify
they're suspense movie. That's why I was like,
thriller.
Yeah, he definitely did
Another one.
Spark it. I feel at least the idea of horror.
Yes, for sure. Yeah. The Omen. By the way, Richard Donner,
director,
is Superman, but he studied how people watch movies in theaters, like when they watch horror movies and something scary or gross is happening, and they look away. He studied how long before the average person looks back.
Oh wow!
He timed his scary moments for that amount of time. Like he was definitely trying to make sure if you looked away that he waited till you look back to get you. But
that's actually genius.
A pioneering approach to it at least.
Mm-hmm. So now we're down to our top 3.
All right, let's see. I'm gonna name at this point, No Country for Old Men.
All right.
I think, by the way, I'm going to clarify that so far these haven't quite been in any particular order, but I think my top 3 are actually top 3. Are we? Is this top 3 right now?
Is this top 3?
Oh, you know what? I realize. I think that the one I wanted to name first is actually my top 3, Wizard of Oz. I already said that. But if I was like ordering them top to bottom, I think Wizard of Oz would actually be in my top 3. But I wanted to kick it off with one that I thought was a clear must-see pick. But what I'm naming now, which I don't think is actually in third place, is No Country for Old Men.
Yeah, that's held up for a good while because that came out 20 years ago, I want to say, or 15 at least.
More closer to 15, closer to 10, I think. I wish I remembered exactly. I think it was around 2010. Maybe it's 2008. It is weird to me how long it's been now.
2007.
Okay, there you go. 15 years, yeah. Yep. It's so another genre that I think this less than I used to, but I still think you want to represent the Western genre. And the thing is, Westerns were huge. They were a huge part of filmmaking for the first half. For the first 50 years, there were constant Westerns being made. And lots of the classic all-time great movies are Westerns. But a lot of them, in modern times, did not treat Native Americans very well. And a lot of them, in my opinion, were really just action movies. They're really just a bunch of like excuses to have people shoot guns around.
I'll admit, like, I love Young Guns, but it is just an action.
Yeah. And a lot of them also are maybe an excuse to show beautiful cinematic imagery of the American West or of the Italian countryside or wherever they're New Zealand now, wherever they're filming Westerns. But anyway, and I've had The Unforgiven, or I think the Clint Eastwood movie, I think it's just called Unforgiven, not The Unforgiven, has been like in my top 10 for a long time, but it's kind of slipped out, kind of like Pulp Fiction, partly because, not to give too much away, but the plot of the movie basically, let me tell you, one reason I really appreciate Unforgiven is because it's a more realistic approach to the Western genre. Like, usually, everyone just like jumps on a horse, rides at top speed, shoots their pistol. The good guy always hits the bad guy, despite the fact they're both riding on horses, and it would be preposterous for someone to be able to aim that well. But in Unforgiven, Clint Eastwood's character, he like tries to get in his horse, and he puts like one foot in a stirrup, and the horse starts turning. He's like hopping on one leg. Like, even though he's this sort of man's man Western cowboy, Clint Eastwood, he still doesn't just automatically get on a horse like no problem. And there's this young kid that joins the party, but he's nearsighted, so he like up close he can't see, or maybe he's farsighted. He's nearsighted. Yeah. So just the idea that like people are still people, that everyone in the Old West wasn't just this master expert horseman gunshot superhero. They were just like people. Then they just had horses and guns, but it didn't mean they were experts at everything. Anyway, so going off a little bit, but the setup of Unforgiven is that a woman is attacked, And so, of course, like the cowboys have got to go get the bad guys. There's way more to it, but that's the basic idea. But it's kind of tough to watch a woman, especially if you put yourself in a woman's shoes. Watching a woman being attacked, that's a tough scene to watch. And I don't think I can include that on a must see, right? I don't think that's not a comfortable thing for me to watch with my
Mhm.
wife or for someone to watch with their mom or their daughter or something. It's a really tough imagery. It's a really tough scene. And even if I think it like does a lot to set up the quest for revenge or whatever, and even if the movie has all other sorts of good things about it, it's really tough.
Right.
Um,
This is for
now,
Unforgiven, right?
that's all Unforgiven I'm
Yeah.
talking about.
Yeah.
No Country for Old Men is set in slightly more modern times. It's like in the 80s, but it still has this old west feel. It's about a sheriff. It's set in Texas. It has the same feel and tone. It's a Coen Brothers movie, and I think they really, even though it's not set in like 1800s time period, it is still fundamentally a western. And to be fair, it's got some pretty tough, violent moments too. But I don't think they're as tough, and they don't start off with it in the way that Unforgiven did. And I also think that this movie hits on some other bases. I'm not going to spoil plot too much for you, but I do think that the movie had a lot of symbolism, a
Mhm.
lot of undertones beyond just the visuals that you're watching. I think it
Right.
did a good job of sort of walking this fine line between being what a lot of these classic all time movies, some people might think they're kind of boring. And this movie had moments that were like really slow and deliberate, and it really built the tone. But then suddenly got real intense. They did a good job of using what might be called boring to create very high intensity moments.
Yeah.
I saw this movie in the theater, and I remember towards the end realizing that Tommy Lee Jones's character, as he was talking in this scene, I remember realizing not just that scene, but throughout the movie, there's probably been a lot of like allegory and symbolism that I just haven't been able to fully process. And as this thought is going through my mind and Tommy Lee Jones is talking, suddenly the movie ends. I'm like, wait, what? Okay, there was definitely more being said there than what was on the surface. And I went back and watched it the next day in the theater. That's how intrigued I was by everything that was going on in that movie and how much meaning was there. And I and it was just, I believe, masterfully created in a bunch of different ways. I think it's a movie, a lot of great movies. Part of what makes them great is that they have a lot of rewatchability. There was a lot of subtlety and nuance going on, and a lot of times the first time you're watching a movie, you're mostly just paying attention to like the main characters and the plot. And a lot of movies, that's all there really is. But great movies have a lot of other stuff going on. They have symbolism, they have subtlety and nuance. There's like meaning behind the color shirt someone's wearing, or the poster or the picture painting that was in the background, or what, all kinds of elements of decisions that were made beyond just like what the character said and what they did. There's all kinds of other stuff, and a lot of times it's hard to pick up on that if you only watch it one time. That said, so I think a movie that has a lot of rewatchability, movies
Director
with a lot of
director asked, is Javier, I may be pronouncing that wrong,
Javier
Javier
Bardem.
Bardem's character supposed to be the devil, an unstoppable, constant evil? What do you
I
think?
definitely think he, at a minimum, can be interpreted as death. Maybe evil, but I think death more than evil. But
Hmm?
that's the type of discussion that this movie can prompt, and I love it for that. Um, but another thing that makes a movie rewatchable is when it has dense dialogue. When there's like a lot of dialogue,
Mhm.
it's hard to keep up or remember all of it that's said, and it creates a lot of quotable moments. And that's one reason Quentin Tarantino's movies are really popular,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
why his movies are rewatchable, because of dense dialogue. Now, all that said, though, I think you can also have great movies that aren't particularly rewatchable. A lot of times because they're very dark and they're tough to watch, and you're never in the mood to watch Schindler's List again. Does that make sense? Like
Yeah, very
it's
good movie, but
good and it's well made, and I like it, and I feel you should see it, but I don't really want to watch it again. It's tough to watch, you know.
Mhm.
I could see someone feeling that way about No Country for Old Men too. Although if it's not too dark for you, you should watch it again because you will get a lot more out of it. And that's probably true of most. I said that about Casablanca as I rewatched that a few times. I, the Graduate's another movie that didn't quite make my list, but that's another one that has a lot of rewatchability. I think
Mhm.
watching that a second or third time, you start to realize, like, oh wait, there was stuff going on there I didn't even pick up on. So
So my top three, or my third place was, so I picked Pixar, and I picked a Japanese director that I thought was really good. But at all these animations and 3D animations and basically cartoons come down to one major company, Disney. Disney was like hugely influential. Me being a fox, I debated about Robin Hood or Fox and the Hound, which Fox and the Hound is. It was a huge debate, by the way. But technically, what movie was like one of the most impactful for me, and how it was done, like just like animation wise, singing, and Lion King could have been it, but for me it was Beauty and the Beast. I thought Beauty and the Beast was really well made, especially for its time, and it still holds up, like the animation, and I mean, I remember the soundtrack, like there's a lot of pluses to that, and of course, it's a pretty basic, don't look at a human for what they are physically, but who they are inside. But anyways, so I put Beauty and the Beast as my third one because of that.
I think that's a reasonable pick. I do remember being quite impressed when Beauty and the Beast came out with the animation of it, and a lot of times times are changing, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, fairy tale stories and musicals, those aren't particularly like manly things, you know what I mean? But despite that, I love musicals, man. A lot of my favorite it's another thing I felt like I really wanted to represent in my top 10, that I don't think I quite did. I didn't really get a musical in there, and I feel bad about it, but if I went to top 20, there probably two would probably get in there.
Yeah. Also,
Beauty and the Beast also gets the double musical and animated value.
Yeah. Also, I think
and Disney probably is also worth representing.
Oh, yeah. I could be wrong, but I feel like it's also the first strong female princess, I guess you could argue, that they made. Aladdin, I think, technically was after Jasmine, but a lot of them were like just like cookie cutter princesses. I guess you could argue, and she actually had a strong will. More independent woman, I guess you could say. I guess that'd be debated, but
that much, but it might be starting to turn the corner there with giving the females more agency rather than just being a girl, the princess to be saved or whatever.
Yeah. So now we're down to the top.
I still just so you know.
You what?
Oh.
Oh yes, I love that song.
Like it's still like in my head to this day. So.
Oh, fun tip: there was a Beauty and the Beast a TV series in the '90s, and guess who made that or helped write it?
Oh yeah, George Martin.
Exactly. Yeah. Something I would actually want to go back to see, because I remember seeing pieces of it, but I was, I don't understand it, or I didn't remember, I should say. So I'm curious, how it was, especially knowing George R. R. Martin now,
I vaguely remember seeing a couple episodes as a kid, and I don't know, it probably is intriguing. My guess is it's probably not that good, because even if Martin did it, he had his limitations. He didn't have the clout then that he has now, and there was still like a lot of like network control over the production. They can only do so much. It's
like I remember one of his issues he said in an interview was he would want to do this like amazing dialogue drama scene. They're like, let's put some action in there, and he's like, what? Why?
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
They're trying to appeal to more of a mass audience, and we'll probably transition if we go from movies to TV to talking about some differences.
Yeah.
By the way, we're not gonna have time. We're not even gonna have time to do top 5 TV shows, Eric. We'll have to do this another time to cover the TV shows.
Yeah, probably. All right, so now we're down to top 2.
Let's see. So top 2. All right, my number 2, Godfather.
Huh?
This is the other one I alluded to earlier other than Wizard of Oz, that I feel like is
Godfather 1.
The classic. Yeah, I'd say Godfather 1.
You could argue 2, I guess.
I kind of consider them as 1 and 2. They were made again. They were meant to be one story.
That's a good point. Yeah.
If I have to separate them, fine. I'll just pick one, and I can.
But we'll just do it as 2. It's fine. Yeah.
In fact, the first time I saw it was an edit. So the plot of the second movie is it flashes back to like before the first movie. It goes back and forth between, if you can imagine the timeline, the timeline of events is A, B, C. And Godfather 1 is B. Godfather 2 is A and C interspliced.
Right.
I saw a version where they edited it back out to A, B, and C. That was my first experience with Godfather. So even more for me, I consider all just one story. But it was written and produced to be just a part one. They just can't make a 6-hour movie, so they split it up. It was planned to be that way from the get-go. It wasn't like an afterthought because they made some money. They had this vision and this plan of this singular story in the first place. I consider them the same, but that said, for example, if you hadn't seen any of these movies we just listed, I would still say you should see The Godfather 1 and then see 8th Grade and Jojo Rabbit and Spellbound. And then after all that, now go watch Godfather 2. Even though I do kind of lump them together, I still think for the scheduling of the time of your life, I still think you'd be better off watching this other variety of movies than 5 hours of this crime drama, which I think The Godfather, despite it being highly acclaimed, and I think it is really good, I also can understand someone thinking, it's boring. You know what I mean? I can see that. It is a slow burn of a drama, and it is also basically about a bunch of corrupt white men. You know what I mean? So I can see like a young black girl. What in the world is she interested in The Godfather for? That said, I as I make that point, I realize it. I don't know if I'm going to spoil. I'm going to spoil a little bit. If you care about being spoiled on The Godfather, actually, before I even say that, let me say something real quick about spoilers.
Yeah.
In my opinion, if something is really great in the first place, it can't be spoiled. It doesn't matter if at the end of Star Wars they blow up the Death Star. That doesn't ruin the movie. It doesn't spoil the movie. It's still a good movie. It's how you get there that makes it great. It's the performance of the characters. It's the skill of the editor. It's the power of the music. All those things don't go away just because you know what happens at the end of the plot.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I still respect that people don't want the ending spoiled. And a lot of movies maybe are very dependent on some twist, like mysteries.
Yeah.
Like I understand that some genres and I feel like films kind of took a turn that way. I would give Sixth Sense a lot of credit and right at that same time period, Fight Club. There was like this wave. There was this huge wave of movies were all based on tricking you in the end. And some of them were good despite knowing what the trick is. But if you're depending on the trick in the end, you're not really good in the first place. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
So, all that said, I'm going to spoil the end of The Godfather. The basic plot is that Al Pacino is part of a crime family. Marlon Brando is the head of it. And it is all these... The whole family and the whole world is grounded in organized crime. But Al Pacino is kind of separated. He's the younger son. He joined the military. He gets married to Diane Keaton. And he ends up taking over. He ends up trying to be separate from it, but he ends up taking over.
Right.
And the final scene is his wife looking into the office as the door closes on her, and him and these other crime bosses are behind closed door, and she's kind of closed out, and it kind of ends. It's kind of a powerful moment where I think it shows that the movie was as much, maybe not as much, but nearly as much about her as any of the other characters, and she just got drawn into this world that she didn't realize, didn't plan for. And my point is, I can see how maybe even a young black girl might get that the movie, might at the end of this movie feel like, yep, I've been closed out of the power that old white men have behind closed doors. So.
Awesome. All right, so for my second, so I included The Dark Knight, but I highly respect Christopher Nolan, and to me, the movie that basically drew me into his movies. Actually, there was a good bit of them, honestly, but I thought one of his peak movies was Inception. I mean, it's like the best action film ever made, for me personally. This is going to action, but but it was just really well made. The camera shots are other tricks, I guess you could say. That I think they used like practical effects on that movie, which is insane. Like, and the storytelling was, really good acting. Like, there's a lot of like amazing things, and that's like what I aspire to be, is something like that. That director. That's me personally,
I think that's an outstanding pick. I will say that there were three different Christopher Nolan movies like that I was considering for my
Yeah.
list. One, we already mentioned The Dark Knight.
Mhm.
Two, Inception, which, by the way, I think is a great uh, sort of vehicle for an action movie.
Mhm.
Like one, I appreciate that it really kind of expects the audience to kind of like think and pay attention, and
Yeah.
after the fact, like kind of figure out and like spur discussion. And I appreciate that it also, on some level, makes an attempt to present some sort of moral questions
Yeah.
and the nature of our identities, what makes us who we are, what do we really want, maybe kind of like the Matrix, even like the idea, like even if our life is a dream, if we're happy in it, is that good enough? Like,
I
what's the
did
point of
consider
life?
Matrix
Like,
1 because Matrix 1 I thought was really good. The
I
others,
also consider the Matrix for
yeah,
my list, by the way. It's
yeah.
it's not quite making a cut. If we went to 20, I think it would. But the third one, which I think it doesn't quite have the sort of
Impact.
effort that
Or,
went into Inception as far as like the big action. The excuse I was gonna say it's a good vehicle for action
Mhm.
because you get to have these different scenarios, these different settings and sceneries and everything, and it was very spectacular. But as I said earlier, I don't care quite as much about spectacle as
Yeah.
I do about character. Memento
Memento's
was
really good.
about equally as clever from a storytelling and an editing standpoint, but take away all the huge frills of action and add a little bit more of a character study.
Mhm.
I don't think I would include that as in a much watch though, because it's really hard to keep up with that movie.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's so
My reason
well
for Inception
crafted.
too, it's like it's almost too much. Like it's not. Yeah, you. Uh, it is great for someone who already loves and cares about great movies, but a casual movie, like I think even a casual moviegoer should still watch Wizard of Oz and
Mhm.
would still appreciate Spellbound, right? But a casual moviegoer with might walk out of Memento being like, I don't get it. You know what I mean? They might not fully care or appreciate what the filmmaker did there. But
Yeah.
also, before I name my last one, I want to point out a director that I love that none of the movies quite made the list.
Mhm.
Wes Anderson.
Yes.
I was really close to putting Grand Budapest Hotel. I think is his best movie, and it was definitely his most acclaimed and successful movie. I was really close to putting Bottle Rocket, which was his first movie, and maybe my favorite. I really love him in all his movies. But but let me point out that Jojo Rabbit has the same aesthetic, and I bet Taika would say that he was inspired by Wes Anderson.
Mhm.
So it kind of got that slot. I want to at least give a nod to Wes Anderson. Before I name it, actually, you know what my number one movie is. I wonder if are there any people still in the chat? Can someone guess?
Director, what do you think? I feel like Orange may know.
Given all the parameters that I've thrown out there and the types of movies I've named,
I don't know if anybody would guess mine. I'm curious.
if I would
He
guess
has no
yours,
idea. He says,
I'll go ahead and say Star Wars: A New Hope.
yeah, the
I think
original
that's the
Star
number
Wars.
one must-watch movie. I think it's I probably had as much impact on culture as almost anything. I think it rivals the Bible. I think probably more people know who Darth Vader is than know who Jonah is or whatever. You know what I mean? Like it's even before it spawned this new wave of sequels and such. It was still such
An impactful.
hugely successful and impactful movie on every base. Never mind the pioneering efforts and special effects. Just, I mean, talk about like even now today, even with everything we have, when you watch that original Star Wars movie, it's still pretty impressive to see those X-wings and TIE fighters flying over the Imperial
Mhm.
cruisers, like the backdrop of the Death Star when Obi-Wan's creeping through the halls,
Lots of
the
symbolism or film theories in that movie.
lots of everything. Like
Yeah.
I mean, symbolism, of course. I mean, it's almost like obvious symbolism, right?
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
almost don't want to mention it because it's so basic. But I don't mean that to be negative because
Mhm.
it's important and integral and maybe less cliche in 1977 than it is in modern times. Like it was still like it's almost half the age of filmmaking going back to that time
Yeah.
period. And just think about how many iconic images come from Star Wars. Even people who haven't seen Star Wars, everyone knows what a freaking lightsaber and the Millennium Falcon and Darth Vader's helmet, a stormtrooper helmet, like
It's true.
just a silhouette, just like Han Solo, just the jack, the vest, Princess Leia. Like these characters are icons of our world.
Mm-hmm.
And never mind the clever dialogue, never mind the good mix of comedy and action, and even some kind of serious tense moments, like when Luke realizes his family's been killed, and the sort of like, it's sort of a basic classic story. In fact, if you think about it, Wizard of Oz and Star Wars are pretty similar, right? You
I
have
think I've
like
heard of
this
that.
character from I say Wizard of Oz, Star Wars. There's the Matrix,
Mm.
Jesus. They all have this character from humble beginnings that realizes they have a bigger destiny. They form up a team. They typically get some special item, a lightsaber, ruby slippers, whatever. You know what I mean? They go off on some quest. It's a very sort of prototype story being told
Mm-hmm.
in a new sci-fi environment with even now pretty good special effects. Back then, spectacular special effects. And it's with all that still, I think, focused on character and drama, not on action. It wasn't dependent on the special effects
The
for
lightsaber
Han
fights or
Solo's
anything. Yeah.
charisma, for Leia's determination, for Vader's menacing, all these things. I can't go on and on. In addition to the fact that it's fine for anyone. It doesn't matter if you're a guy or a girl or a kid or an adult or a parent or a teacher. It's not like for one certain audience. Like it's fine for everyone. It's probably great and exciting and fun for most everyone.
Mm-hmm.
It had pioneering effects. It launched careers. It created all kinds of iconic imagery and I don't know what the equivalent audionic, just the sound of like the
Yes.
spaceships
Yeah.
flying by, the lightsaber. Those sounds have become icons, for lack of a better word. So anyway, I could go on and on. Star Wars, number one.
So for my first, I trace my back to when I started liking movies, when I started wanting to write movies. And it's just not me. One of my good friends, who's a director, he was also inspired by this movie. Do you know which movie I'm talking about? I'm curious if you know what my number one is. It's by a huge director, technically. What's that?
I'm tempted to think that it might be a horror movie.
It's more of a thriller.
But I think you said you didn't have the Halloween seemed to be covering that slot for you.
Yeah.
Is it Steven Spielberg, the director?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Is it all right, I think it's between two. I've got two guesses.
Which one?
They're Indiana Jones or E.T.
No, actually, not either of them.
Either of those.
And it was a massive. Now they made sequels. Sequel to the original is the key. Jurassic Park.
Oh, of course, yeah.
Every kid wanted to be making movies. I feel, especially during that time, and it impacted me greatly. And I didn't even realize it impacted like people I knew. I'm talking about for writing. And I'm a huge fan of. Hey Draco. I'm a huge fan of dinosaurs. And it's just like it allowed you to be a kid, except it's a little darker, obviously, because the dinosaurs actually try to kill you. But just the idea of it.
It's a horror. It's like on the edge of
horror. It is, yeah.
Like monsters and there's
So yeah, that like I actually almost put Inception, but I was like, what really started me as wanting to do this type of stuff, and it comes down to Jurassic Park, one. So yeah, to me that's just a personal thing to me, that impacted me. So.
Okay, so you want real quick? Do you want to run down your top 10?
Yeah. So
not necessarily even in order, but maybe in order.
So starting at 10, You Tell, 9, Good Will Hunting, 8, Toy Story 3, 7, Pulp Fiction, 6, Hot Fuzz, 5, Kiki's Delivery Service, 4, Halloween, 3, Beauty and the Beast, 2, Inception, and 1, Jurassic Park. You remember yours?
I want to point out 2 on your list that I didn't see were Kiki's Delivery Service and Yentl.
Mm-hmm.
I'll make a point of seeing those. And also, before I list mine off, I'm going to clarify that this was my shot at top 10 must-watch movies, not necessarily my favorite or best, although there's a lot of crossover. But okay. And also, not in any particular order. I think my top 3 are top 3, but otherwise, it's not necessarily in order. Spellbound, Moonlight, 8th Grade, Spider-Verse, Jojo Rabbit, Country for Old Men. Did I say Moonlight?
I don't think you did.
Moonlight, Godfather, Casablanca, Wizard of Oz, Star Wars. There was, which ones had you not seen? You did Jojo Rabbit,
Jojo Rabbit, Casablanca I may have not seen, to be honest with you. Moonlight, Spellbound, Spider-Verse.
See, that's right, man. Eric, you gotta get on it. You haven't seen like half of my list.
Nor has Akadi.
What?
Akadi assist. But yeah, thank you all for coming to watch. We didn't actually have time to cover the TV series or series, web series, or whatever we're going to call it. So we are going to come back to do that. And in general, me and Sean are going to be reviewing Better Call Saul when that comes out. I think it's this Sunday. We're not going to review it Sunday, but it comes out this Sunday. And we're going to be attempting to review every episode because it's the finale.
Yeah, I'm going to be out of town next weekend, so I may or may not be able to do that first week or two. Also, I was thinking we might want to do like a recap leading up to, that might be too much, I don't know, but
hey, Kinos. Yes, we just got this done. Kinos just got in. Like, I just missed it. But no, we'll figure it out. Obviously, I want Sean to be here for the review, so if I have to be a week or two late, that will happen.
I will say, by the way, that top 10 TV shows, I was going to include Better Call Saul. And at first, Eric wanted to only do top 5, which is just impossible. But I think if we did only do top 5, I still think I was going to include Better Call Saul. I think that's how, that just to anyone out there who hasn't seen it or isn't aware, it's kind of a prequel to, or not kind of, it's a prequel to Breaking Bad. And I think better than Breaking Bad. I think it used to be kind of blasphemous to say that, but I think at this point, even Breaking Bad fans are like, yeah, it's better than Breaking Bad.
And we're going to talk more about that on the TV series Tops, because there's going to be a lot of discussion about the different TV shows, because there's a few that are going to be different from mine than Sean's for sure. It'll be interesting. But thank you all for coming. And I will see you all later. Thank you, Director, and Drago, and Kinos, and Orange. Yes.
Before we go, let me get people, please, to like or subscribe to my channel on YouTube, which is DancingSean, and also follow me on Twitter, at DancingSean on Twitter. Yes, do that.
All right. Well, you guys have a good night. Thank you for coming. Give me one sec. And go away, you. Okay. Bye-bye.